Hi, I'm pro saxophonist Jamie Anderson. You're watching Get Your Sax Together. On this week's show, I'm going to give you an introduction to diminished scales and teach you a few cool things that you might not know about them. Just before we kick straight into today's lesson, I've prepared a really cool PDF cheat sheet for you guys. It's all completely free. Just use the link that you can see there or click the link in the description. You can go and download your free PDF, print it off and follow along as we go through the main points of today's lesson. Also, if you haven't already checked it out, go and check out my free 1-hour saxophone success masterclass where I go through a whole load of really cool stuff that could dramatically and instantly transform your sax playing. It's all completely free. Help yourself dig into those cool things. And now let's start looking at diminished scales. Let's start off with the absolute basics. What is a diminished scale? Well, it's unlike any other scale that you know because it's got 8 notes instead of 7 notes like you're used to. It's also a symmetrical scale. You go up a tone, then you go up a semitone, then you go up a tone, then you go up a semitone, and you keep going up like that to form the full scale. And a diminished scale sounds like this. Now, because a diminished scale has this symmetrical pattern all the way up, it means that there's only 3 different diminished scales to learn, not 12 like every other scale. So that's a massive bonus when you learn your diminished scales. You've got C diminished, C sharp diminished, D diminished, and then when you get to E flat diminished, it's exactly the same as C diminished, but starting up a minor third. So there's a complete bonus for your diminished scales, only 3 to learn. So the next question is, where do you use these diminished scales when you're improvising? And the answer to that question lies in the type of chord that you want to improvise over. Now, to make things easier, even though it's the same scale, we refer to it as either starting with a whole step or starting with a half step. So we talk about the diminished scales being whole half or half whole. Or another way of saying it is tone semitone or semitone tone. So for example, a tone semitone scale from C would look like this, and it would sound like this. And a half whole diminished scale or semitone tone diminished scale would look like this, and it sounds like this. So if you see the chord symbol E flat diminished, for example, you're going to do a diminished scale starting on E flat that also starts with a whole step first or a tone first. So it's going to be the tone semitone diminished scale starting on E flat or the whole half diminished scale starting on E flat. If, however, you're playing over a dominant chord, then you use the half whole version of the scale. So if you had E flat 7, you can use the E flat diminished scale starting with a semitone and then a tone, or starting with a half step and then a whole step. So diminished chords, whole half, dominant chords, half whole. So the best way of using diminished scales is over diminished chords or over dominant chords. And now that you've learned which version of the scale to use, what notes do you play? What are some cool patterns that you can use? Well, because diminished scales repeat in this symmetrical pattern going up in minor thirds, there's some pretty cool things that you can do. For a start, when you look at the diminished scale, you'll find that there's a triad on each minor third step up. So on a C diminished scale that starts with a whole step, you're going to get triads on D, F, A flat and B. Now to make it even more cool, you're going to get major triads and minor triads on those notes. You're going to get a D major and a D minor. You're going to get an F major and an F minor. You're going to get an A flat major and an A flat minor. And you're going to get a B major and a B minor triad, all for the price of that one chord. So when you're improvising using diminished scales, you can harness these triads moving in minor thirds. So let's have a look at those triads now. And then what you can do is string together series of triads. So let's say, for example, I take the major version of the triads. I could do D major, F major, A flat major, B major, and it'll sound something like this. So if you're going through your chord sequence and you see that there's a C diminished chord, that is something that you could play over a C diminished chord. By the same token, if you see that there's a D7 chord, that's something that you could play over a D7, those 4 different triads. Now, because there's only 3 different diminished scales and the patterns repeat, it stands to reason that you could play the same thing over an E flat diminished, over an F sharp diminished, over an A diminished, and over an F7, an A flat 7, and a B7. So plenty of value for money there. So just to finish off, I'm going to teach you 2 really cool patterns. They're both quite famous patterns that are famously used on diminished chords. The first one you can hear Coltrane do quite a bit. I'm going to teach you this one first. So let's say that you're on a C7 chord, and we're going to do C half whole diminished. The pattern is going to go C, B flat, E flat, D flat, and then you repeat the whole thing down a minor third. So the pattern is going to sound like this. Now, the second pattern I'm going to teach you, I first heard Branford Marsalis do on his recording of Yes and No, on the bridge of Yes and No. But it's actually quite a famous pattern that many other jazz players have used. Now, for this one, let's say that we're on a D7 chord. So we're going to go D half whole. Now, by the way, for this whole video, I've been talking in tenor pitch. So if I say D, I'm going to play a D on tenor, just so that it matches up. But of course, it's a tone different from concert pitch. So let's say we're on a D7 and we're going to go D half whole diminished scale. This pattern would, well, you could start on any minor third and transpose it, but let's say for the sake of argument, we're going to start on B for this one. You're going to go B, G sharp, and then upper semitone A, C. That's the first 4 notes. And then the next 4 notes of the pattern, you go down a major triad, but with a flattened ninth at the bottom. So we go up to top D, A, F sharp, that's the D triad, with an E flat on the bottom. And then what you do is you transpose the whole thing, all 8 notes, perfectly down a minor third. And that's going to give you the full pattern. It's going to sound like this. So that's all I've got for you this week. A bit of an introduction to the diminished scale. It's a really, really cool sound. Because it doesn't really sound centered in any one key, the diminished scale's got a really beautiful, haunting, melancholy sound to it, which you can really harness in your solos. It's a fantastic scale to start getting used to. So start learning those 3 diminished scales. Try and master some of the patterns I've taught you, and you're really going to make some progress. If you feel like you're getting great value for today's lesson, you can buy me a coffee using the link below. Many people do that every week, and I really, really appreciate it. As always, thank you so much, you guys. It means the world to me, it really does. Until next week, where I'll be coming back with some more fantastic content to help you get your sax together. Practice hard, practice smart, and enjoy your music. See you later, guys. Practice hard, practice smart, and... and what? Enjoy your music.